And when it came time to create the University of Virginia, he insisted that the university should have a school of what he called technical philosophy that was on a par, on the same footing as the programs in humanities, in law, and in the social sciences. So Jefferson loved technology because he really believed that technological progress was essential to the success of the American experiment and the well-being of humanity. And he would be thrilled to see all of you here today interested, excited to find out about innovation, creativity, entrepreneurship, with a passion, we hope, for taking those crazy, awesome ideas and shaping them into new products, into new ventures, into things that improve our society, improve our communities. And so today we're going to introduce you to get you excited about innovation, entrepreneurship, by talking about not just, in some abstract academic way, the process of entrepreneurship, but tell you about the very personal journeys that entrepreneurs go on. What's the path like? Where are the moments that are thrilling? Where are the moments that are like, oh my God, how did I ever get myself into this? Because it's that passion, it's understanding that journey that all of you can go on that will be so exciting and so valuable for you in your careers. And so without any further ado, let me introduce to you a man who needs no introduction, because Liz has already done that, Alex Surfetta, who is my right-hand man for entrepreneurship. Alex, it's your show.
Thank you guys. So if you haven't noticed, we do it in the lights, with lights on, we do it with lights off, through technical difficulties and any obstacles. We're about to get the lights on, hopefully, one of these minutes. But yeah, thank you so much for coming to the second annual Spark, Faces of Technology Innovation. I'm gonna just go through real quickly why we're here. Today is a celebration of the entrepreneurial journey. A lot of what you hear in pop culture is how much money they made or how amazing they are. We treat these people like rock stars. They are rock stars, but they're just like all of us. Only they had a crazy idea, and I do like to say that. They had a crazy idea and they actually went for it with all their hearts. Some of them have been at it for years. They didn't give up. So what this event is special though, what makes it special, is that we have those who are the crazy ones who do awesome things that were in your shoes. And I went to all your classes, you all heard this before. But they're in your shoes, and so they're gonna tell you how they did it and show you the path forward, and that's possible at UVA. So here's just a little bit of history. I started doing these workshops in 2014, and if you look over there, one of our speakers, Ashwin, is in the red. Can't really quite see him. There I am, right there, talking with him, right? That was the first day I met him. This was August 31st, 2014, so almost 4 years ago to the day. Pretty amazing. And I didn't know who I was talking to at that point. But who else was here? This is a bad picture, Kevin, I'm sorry, but Kevin, Kevin and Ashwin were in the next workshop, which was not long afterwards. Kevin was like, I'm a fourth year, like, all these first, what are you doing here? But amazing, right? So look at this. This was the projects right here. They weren't what they are now. They were similar ideas, but through the journey, they changed. Kevin was working on a pet contraception, and Ashwin was working on a hospital-acquired infection project, so getting rid of them. You'll see that they've changed to this day, but I had a beard. So here we go. This is Jack right here, and Ashwin, and their good friend Brent, who's actually sitting behind them. Look at these friendships right here. Brent himself is an entrepreneur as well. And they're helping little kids. Look at this great service opportunity right here. This was a hackathon in which these kids were trying to build, I forget what it was, some amazing Arduino thing, and they're all helping them up. But this was 3 years ago. They're still friends to this day. This is Agrospheres. So this is Piem right here. This was them winning one of the competitions in entrepreneurship. This is Liz with them. This is in Rice Hall. This is Liz again with Ashwin. The aspect ratio on this screen got a little screwed up, but that is indeed Ashwin at the top there with one of the people who helped him along the way, and Liz. And this is Jack at one of the really cool competitions we did that He was in the finals for, but unfortunately, Agri-Steers beat him out that year. But that's okay, because Jack went on to a better idea. Here we go. This is Agri-Steers right here. This is Payam, whose co-founder was Amir. They worked with a couple other people. Yes, lights. I'm ready for my close-up. And then this is Beanstalk. This is Jack's idea that I remember when Jack came to me in the parking lot. It was near the corner, and you're like, I have a new idea. I want to be a farmer. I was like, okay, Jack, whatever you want to do. Support him no matter what. And actually, this is an incredible company. So that was 2017. Okay, just switching gears right now. You guys know what the ACC is by now? Yep. There's a football game today. It's not in the ACC, but typically our rivals are in the ACC. We're okay at football, so it'll be fun today. We're pretty good at basketball. We're even better at the entrepreneurship competition. That one's pretty new. It's been running for 3 years. And there's some pretty cool entrepreneurship schools on here. However, every single year of the competition, we have just wiped the floor with our competition. It's like, it's not even fair anymore. They're coming to us being like, UVA, what? Like, you're not even ranked for entrepreneurship. How are you guys doing this? And they're all technology entrepreneurs. And they're all sitting in this first row right here, I'm about to talk to you. We also do really well in the Collegiate Inventors Competition. All of you, Oliver, well, 3 of you all were in that competition there. Agri-Steers won, and this was probably my favorite one. This was Ashwin, I don't even know, he's just flexing, honestly. Ashwin's an aerospace engineer entering this medical device competition as an undergrad against undergraduates and graduates beyond the ACC. First place. Okay, so enough of that. This translates into real stuff. Contraline got funding. This was an old article, so way more now. Agri-Steers also got funding from Silicon Valley, Charlottesville, and we're just part of technology entrepreneurship is what Liz, Bernie, and I are, but we operate in a very diverse ecosystem of players at UVA, and so there's many of them. And you'll get to meet them if you come to this kickoff on September 6th, 5 to 6:30. That's on the flyer I gave you. We're from UVA Engineering. We build really cool things, and what we really do, what we focus on, well, at least I focus on, I'm trying to solve this really interesting problem right here, in that there are 2,500 universities at this point, at least, that have entrepreneurship programs. We do very similar, and have done similar things as them. And yet for the last 20 years, they've been taking data of the rate of new entrepreneurs. This blue line right here is the age category 20 to 34. It's been almost a zero. You could say 0, maybe less. There's no error bars in this, and we engineers like statistical significance. So there's been a 0% or 0 times increase in the amount of entrepreneurs actually coming out in the United States. There's been a little bit more in the older generations, but all of this is the college-educated people, all the college-educated programs. What are we doing wrong, right? Or what are we missing? So last 3 years, what we've seen is an 18 times increase in the amount of students actually pursuing projects outside of these formal programs like classes and clubs and competitions. And we've seen a 4 times increase in students making their project their full-time jobs, right? Amazing. So what's our secret? We cultivate that entrepreneurial mindset by fostering an actual entrepreneurial culture. Okay, so how do we do that, right? This is just some buzzwords right here. We do something called the intentional design of peer influences. Basically, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. That's a colloquial quote right there. We have a community that looks more or less like this. These small groups of students who are at the same level of engagement or pursuing the same things, who are very tightly knit, who are in a larger ecosystem of other groups like that. This is actually known as an entrepreneurial network. Coined in 2000. You would have thought in the last 20 years someone else would have picked up on this. And that's all mumbo jumbo right there. So basically what I'm trying to say is entrepreneurship is like fitness. You don't really become fit by listening to Arnold Schwarzenegger tell you how he lifts heavy things against gravity. You don't become fit by reading everything you can, listening to podcasts about how the physiological principles of muscles are built and fats reduced, or by reading scientific studies. It's all descriptive stuff. You don't become fit by sitting inside of a gym. You don't even need a gym. And even with the best personal trainers, they can't really do the work for you. So, do New Year's resolutions work? Work for two weeks and then something happens. Something always happens. It happens to me, right? I can't even really do this. In entrepreneurship, it's the same. You might get really inspired, maybe after today, but what is it you're doing after this? Are you more likely to be fit if you have friends who also do, rather than talk about going to the gym? Yes. And who's more likely to be fit? The person who goes to the gym to get that beach body for the summer, or the person who just goes because they would feel weird if they didn't 3 to 5 times a week? That second person. And so really what we're trying to do here is figure out who is putting in the work to get that beach body, so an external motivation, like going for a competition. And then we work with them until the process is a lifestyle, right? So you'd feel weird if you weren't working on your project. So that's really what you're going to hear about today. Some students came in like this, but a lot of these students, they weren't planning on being entrepreneurs. Okay, so it's hard doing it on your own. Last thing I'm going to say is that your next steps after today, I'm going to announce after the speakers speak. So you got to stay till the end. Stick around. Without further ado, this is Spark, and I would like to welcome Ashwin to the stage. So, the one thing to note is that Ashwin's actually not living in Virginia right now. We have a grant called Funders and Founders in Residence, and so he's going to be with us for a couple of days talking to classes. So, with that, here is the mic.
Well, as he's doing that, thanks Alex for that kind introduction. Like Alex said, my name is Ashwin Karthikeyan, but since that's a mouthful, we'll just go with Ashwin for short. And I just graduated this May as an aerospace engineering student, engineer I guess now officially, and went promptly full-time on my startup InMedBio, which is a medical device startup. We're developing wound care dressings for patients with a condition called a chronic wound. So these types of wounds are very, very easily infected, have a complex, high-maintenance healing process, and last for a very, very long time. The patients we're actually dealing with sometimes have these wounds on their body for a period of years. So just a terrible scenario all around. And it's especially bad in emerging markets where we're actually focused. And the reason is patients can't afford the traditional treatments we take for granted here. So things like skin grafts and glucose control, which is too expensive for these patients. So they have to rely on this vicious cycle of frequent infections and amputations. And the products that they're using are very substandard. They're usually gauzes or ointments that don't really do anything, don't fulfill the healthcare requirements, and have to be changed sometimes multiple times a day. So the solution, it's actually our patent-pending innovation. It's called Phoenix Aid, and it's a multi-layer wound site dressing that's essentially designed to accelerate the healing of the wound, block infections to the wound, comfort the wound, and be highly durable and cost-effective. But I'm not here today to really talk about my startup. I'm really here to tell you about my journey, like Alex asked me to do. And so where that comes from is I really wanted to share 4 stories, one from each of my years at UVA, and sort of like a moral lesson, I guess you could call it, that I sort of picked up from doing things wrong, basically. And hopefully, you'll take something from it and not repeat the same mistakes I did. And I wanted to start with this picture. There you go. Kevin's face is so big. So you guys already saw this picture, and so like Alex said, this is one of my first weeks at UVA, and I was in this room because I saw a flyer that said, "Do you want to win $20,000?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's actually pretty cool. I want to do that." And so I already sort of had this idea for the technology I was working on. It was obviously very different. I was like, I'll come do this competition and wipe the floor. I was very cocky like that. That didn't happen. Kevin actually won. And that's mostly because my presentation sucked and his was amazing. And so I learned something that day. A couple things. First of all, you have to learn from failures. This was the first of many, many, many failures. A lot of setbacks, things I did wrong, a lot of pivots. But something else I learned is you can learn from other people's successes. So I looked at what Kevin did right, what I did wrong, and started using that to help me, design and work better on my technology and improve what I was doing. And as we move into second year, I want to show you this. So this is a picture of probably the world's worst business card. There's also my first business card. And for some reason, I thought to talk to people, you need the business card, because I didn't know any better. And so I made 500 of these and started handing them out like candy at different events and speaker events and galas and things around Charlottesville. What I quickly realized is I didn't A, need the card, and B, if I just started talking to people, people were very apt to listen. they like to share their stories and see if there's any commonalities. And especially older people, like mentors, professors, people in the Charlottesville community who are, established entrepreneurs, they were very excited to talk to young students like me at the time, actually share their experience and give advice. And this is great for me because at that time, this is my second year at UVA, we'd only raised about $1,000 worth of grants. And when you divide it by all the man hours that's spent on the project at that point, it comes to maybe like 5 cents an hour. So it really wasn't worthwhile in that certain sense. But what I learned from this is networking. A lot of people, at least like people like me, think that networking is something that's a really big deal. You have to be on like LinkedIn or go to like formal events. But what it really means is, you talk to the person in your Starbucks line. You talk to the person sitting next to you on an airplane. You just share stories, and it's so helpful. And you meet some really cool people and make some really great friends. And speaking of great friends, Jack Ross is sitting down there, a great friend of mine. He actually told me about this during my third year. So this is a competition that he had applied for, and was gracious enough to tell me about it, even though we'd be competing against each other. And it's called the We Were Created Awards. Now the unfortunate thing is, I learned about this competition about 5 hours before it was due. And so I was sitting in my dorm room with a bunch of my friends. We're all about to go to a movie, and I decided, you know what, screw it. I'll stay home and actually, spend my weekend working on this instead of going to a movie. Just 5 hours of my life will happen. And I'm so glad I did that, because this is the first major award we won. It was for $36,000. It's a terrible picture, but it says so up there. $36,000. And for something I would never have been able to do if I hadn't taken advantage of that golden opportunity. It's very rare to get that lucky, but the thing is, you have to use that luck. I've noticed a lot of people, they have these opportunities or they notice things, but sometimes they decide, you know what, it's not worth the effort. The thing is, you really have to take chances with entrepreneurship. You really have to hustle, and that's something I learned I wish I'd learned it earlier on, but it's something that I've really taken to heart. And now we move on to fourth year. So essentially, after all of that, that WeWork grant, I was in a dry spell. I hadn't actually won anything, and I was actually really struggling with my startup. A lot of that was due to the fact that I wasn't actually focusing on my startup as much. I didn't really know how to move forward. And so I did something that I really wish I'd done years ago, and I really started to look at my betters. It's probably a better way to say this. It's basically looking at people that had already done this before. And so for me, it was pretty easy because there's two guys. One's Kevin, and one's Pyan, who's also going to be talking later today. And so this is, pictures that you already saw of them winning the ACC Venture Cup. But essentially what I did is I nagged them constantly and consistently for a very long time to get a lot of advice and feedback on what I was doing wrong and what I should be focusing on. At this point, they're both established entrepreneurs and gone full-time on their companies and raised money. And it was really great for me. And it worked too. Because like Alex said, we not only picked home first place earlier this year, but we also got the People's Choice Award, which is pretty cool because this was at Georgia Tech, so we actually beat out the home crowd. And so if you got nothing else from my little talk here, I want to just focus on 4 things. The first of all, Alex harps on this a lot, but it actually is really important. UVA is a great community, and it's not just UVA, it's a Charlottesville community as a whole. There are so many established entrepreneurs, VCs, investors, mentors, peers, just people that you can go towards for resources and help. And it's very, very important that you do so because they are really willing to help you out. The other thing, and this is actually something very important, especially for your first and second years, UVA is a place that you can take risks safely. So this may seem a bit counterintuitive, but for me, the first 2 years just working on this, we made maybe, I think, $2,000 with the grant money. So that's not that much. And it's really, if I had a full-time job or was doing this outside of school, it really doesn't make any sense for me to be putting in all this effort for really no gain. And so it's not something I could have really done outside of the university landscape. But since I was at university, getting a degree on, on the side, entrepreneurship number one, getting a degree on the side, I could take that risk. And so it paid off because now we've raised well over $150,000 with the grants going full-time and raising our seed round. So it worked out, but that was because, I could take those risks in a sort of safer spot. And the third thing is, sort of, a lot of people don't realize this, but UVA is very diverse and accessible. The reason I picked UVA over all the other engineering schools I was considering is because you actually have the ability to go and talk to a lot of different classes. So I actually ended up taking classes in Darden, the Curry School, in Baton, music classes, other classes in engineering. And what this really helped me do is learn different types of perspectives, meet some very cool, interesting people. And that really helped shape both me and my startup to what it is today. And the last thing is, and this is a bit corny, but essentially now you're part of the extended family, and this is very important. So, like Liz, Alex, and Professor Carlson were saying, it doesn't matter if you do something now or you decide to do it 10 years down the line. Wahoo's are for life. And so, reach out to alumni, reach out to people but just remember, you're part of the family, and there's always people there to support you. So with that, Wahoo up, and thank you for your time.
That was a great first talk. Hello. So the next speaker I would like to present, Ashwin graduated this May in 2018. The next speaker graduated in 2017, and it's Jack Ross right here.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jack Ross, and I'm sure you're going to notice a few themes that are going to come through the presentations this afternoon. One, we all have known each other for a good while and kind of helped each other along the way, but there really are some core principles to moving forward in your entrepreneurial project, and I want to talk about a few of those today. The main one being momentum. Picking up and sustaining momentum as you build your venture is the single most important thing, in my opinion. It's what keeps you moving forward. Before I dig into that, I want to talk a little bit about me. I'm from Alexandria, Virginia, in Northern Virginia. I graduated UVA in 2017 with a degree in computer engineering. When I graduated, I started a company called Beanstalk with my brother, and we build automated farms that grow pesticide-free heirloom produce in very large quantities. Earlier this year, we participated in Y Combinator out in Silicon Valley. Shortly after, I was awarded the STEM Catalyst Award by the Virginia Governor, Ralph Northam, for this work at Beanstalk. And this talk is about momentum. And to give some larger context into how I've built, lost, and tried to rebuild momentum throughout my time, I want to go back to 14 years old. When I was 14, everything seemed to work. Things seemed to make sense. I knew what I wanted to do, and it seemed pretty straightforward how to get there. It started simple: learn to code. At that time, everyone that I knew that knew how to program was doing phenomenally well, making tons of money. I would learn to code. I would go buy myself the Iron Man Audi R8 car. And shortly after, I would be able to move to Silicon Valley, attend Stanford, and then that would solve all my problems thereafter. I did learn to code, and I published an app on the App Store in their first year of the App Store being open. At that time, apps like Bejeweled or Angry Birds were in the headlines for making millions of dollars with very small teams and even sometimes pretty junior developers. So I thought if I put this out there, I'd have an instant success. In my first week, I think I got 7 downloads, and they were my mom on all of her different devices. But I kept at it, and I actually made a mistake early on. I thought the problem was the product I was building wasn't good enough, and so people weren't using it. And I wasted about a year working on that, trying to build a better product, until I actually went out and asked for some help and found a mentor in the DC area who told me that I needed to focus on marketing. And it's pretty clear when that advice took place. And I went from a few downloads a week to a few thousand a day. And I was actually able to buy myself a sports car. It's not an R8, but it is an RX-8, so, close. And I thought everything was going pretty well, until the last part of my journey. Stanford University said, no thanks. And that was a really big bummer. To me, that was the final piece in the puzzle, because I never really thought about what I would do at college or what would come after. It was just getting there was the big step, and then the rest of it would be solved. But this ended up being a really, really good thing. When that happened, I decided to take a step back and try focusing on some things beyond just software. I lived in Kellogg dorms with two of my best friends in the world who are actually here today. And started to focus on some different things beyond my venture of enjoying myself at the university, of having a social life. I pledged a fraternity, and for those of you that are first years, when bid day comes around, you'll see this crazy adventure of bids given and men thrown into the air. But I still wanted to do something after all of this. I wanted to get out there and build something. And so I was approached by a friend of a friend to build what sounded like one of the coolest software products out there to help mentor other people. It's something that resounded with me. And it was an incredible time. I was connected with this, what I thought was a very experienced executive, much older than I was. And I lived the life that I thought entrepreneurs did. I had courtside tickets to the Wizards. I was hanging out with people at fancy restaurants and seeing all those cars that I wanted. But we had very different ideas of how to start that company. And I didn't realize at the time how conflicting they were and how big of a problem that is when you're trying to accomplish something that the original founders don't see things the same way. My co-founder wanted to immediately go out, raise money, build out an executive team, and then get some other people to do the product, which in the early days is all there is. I wanted to build the product, but I was junior, and so I went with his approach. And we actually did raise $250,000, but that created more problems than I ever could have foreseen. It created a ton of tension between us. I wanted to focus on certain things. He thought I was just being juvenile. And I actually got diluted out of the company and had some very difficult conversations, and the company ended up dying in a fiery crash. And that was a really hard lesson. And to me, it brought me back to maybe I'm doing things wrong. Maybe I'm missing the mark here. This feels like my fault because this isn't where I want to be. And so I found some advice that you've already heard today, which is you're the average of the people you spend the most time with. And I actually met Alex very early on at my time at UVA, and we used to talk about this all the time, of how we could make this more built into this community. And for me, who I wanted to become was a founder who had the ability to build a great team, build a great product, bring things to market. And so that meant I need to surround myself with people who are doing that. And so I looked in town, and I wanted to see who was making a big splash in Charlottesville. And at my second year at the university, the biggest startup that I could find was Willow Tree. They're still headquartered here in Charlottesville, and they're much larger than they were when I started there. But I wanted to go work there and figure out how things actually worked in the real world. And it was the best decision I could have made. I was fortunate enough to actually get to work with the founder there, Michael Pritchard. And he showed me the time from the very beginning of that company, how awful it is in those early days, but how great things can become. And you have to keep that in mind, and you have to keep your wits about you. And his biggest thing is if it's not fun, it's not worth it. And so he made everything he did a ton of fun, and it attracted a lot of people, and he was able to solve some really incredible problems. And so I took that to heart, and I said, I need to have other people around me that I have a ton of fun with. And so here we've got, many of the speakers today. My friend Chris Cody, who, Chris, are you out there? I think he's actually jet skiing in North Carolina right now. But this group of people, nothing is impossible. And I like to think that on a good day, I believe that, but you don't always have good days. And so the biggest thing that this group does is we increase each other's momentum. It's very easy to be stopped by yourself. Think about if you've taken calculus. Think about if you tried to do that outside of school. You might not have finished that textbook, but you were in a setting where there were so many other people moving forward that the momentum of the entire group pushed you through to finish that lesson. And so when I eventually found something that I really wanted to dig into, I had this amazing group, and I already had some great momentum. And so things happened very quickly. I started Beanstalk just after graduation. I went full-time actually the day after I graduated. And it's been roughly a year since my brother and I started this company. To give you a little bit of background, once again, we build automated indoor farms in very large warehouses to service city-scale food needs. But in the past year, we went from winning a grant and joining the iLab to building our first prototype, to building a more advanced robotic version of that prototype, and then to the largest scale project that we're undertaking right now, building these massive towers that will grow several thousands of pounds of food a month. And because we were part of this group that had incredible momentum, who we speak with every single day and in a formal way every other week, we were able to talk about all the things that we were doing and where we could improve and how we could move faster and hear from them about how they're doing, which is just as important because it keeps you in high spirits. And those high spirits will keep you moving forward. So I really do hope that you involve yourself in this community and you try to find a group that will keep you moving forward and keep you in high spirits, because that's the only way you're going to get through it. If there's anything I can do to help anyone to be a part of this community, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'm more than happy to talk about whatever's on your mind. Thank you so much.
I mean, the community here is incredible. I want to say to the people in the back, if you guys are standing because you don't want to interrupt anything, there are some seats around here. Okay, so without further ado, so Jack graduated last year. So now we're going to bring up Payam, Magrospheres. Give Payam a round of applause.
All right, thank you, Alex. So yeah, I know it's game day, and I appreciate you guys coming out. So Spark 2017, this is more of like, my journey as an undergraduate into Agrospheres and what we've been up to lately. This is a young Payam Purtahari, so full of passion, so optimistic, coming into UVA. I just wanted to go to med school. I didn't have what, Ashwin had. He knew he was going to be an entrepreneur. Jack, he knew he wanted to be an entrepreneur. I hadn't heard the word entrepreneurship. I didn't think about the word entrepreneurship. I just wanted to go to med school. And so, when you're pre-med, I don't know if anyone here is pre-med, you hear all these weird rumors, like, take these classes, pick a weird major, like, really show a way to, like, separate yourself from the rest of the pack. So I came into the College of Arts and Sciences, and I thought, maybe I'd be a biology major, but that fit in with the pack of what everyone else is doing. So I learned about this cool new major called nanomedicine. And so I decided to transfer into the engineering school for my second year. And this is, when my life started changing. So, I was, trying to get into a lab. My grades weren't great. I wasn't set up for med school. I wasn't doing research. And I'm going into my third year looking for, something to do to, set me apart from the rest of, the crowd. And if you're in BME, you'll meet someone named Kidder, who's the undergraduate, student advisor. And, there was a major night, and she said, can you come and, talk about nanomedicine? So I did. And luckily, that night, I was talking about nanomedicine, I run into this guy, Mark Kester, he just left Penn State, and he's come to UVA to be a professor. He has a lab. And he's like, oh, nanomedicine, I'm the nano guy at Penn State, and I've never had undergraduates. Do you want to spot in my lab? Yeah, obviously I do. But when you're applying to labs, you'll know it's competitive. You need good grades. You need mission statement. I'm not doing this for med school. I'm passionate about your research. I want to learn everything from you. So I read up on his stuff, and I'm ready for this meeting because my GPA is not great. My transcript sucks. So I'm going in. I'm meeting with him. He's like, hey, just join my lab. I was like, I really liked your latest paper on photos. I don't need to hear that. Just join my lab, go meet my scientists, learn something. So I was like, okay, I need to make a good impression on him. And he does have companies. He does entrepreneurship a lot at Penn State. So when he came to, so yeah, he was like, there's this E-Cup talk I'm going to be at. He told his undergraduates in his lab, come to this talk. And I wanted to kiss up to him, like, oh yeah, entrepreneurship. I'm there. I'll show up. And this was a great moment because at this event, he meets Alex, who then meets Sean. And Sean and Alex are leading this iGEM team where they're working on this really cool synthetic biology application. And the iGEM team kind of disbands, but Sean stays onto that team, and Amir catches wind of the technology and he wants to join. So when I go and meet Amir and Sean, they tell me, this is this cool technology, you want to use it for therapeutics, let's do something together. And I was like, that sounds really awesome. And that began, that birthed something truly magical. I thought I was going to say agrispheres, that's the next slide. But the first slide is this bromance between Amir and I. And, I'm glad Jack brought this up about his co-founder because this is very important. So when you have a co-founder that you get along with really well, you see the same vision, and you know each other's strengths and weaknesses, that can do a lot for your company. And if you don't look at your co-founder the way I look at Amir, you don't have the right co-founder. But yeah, so agrispheres. We meet, the spring of 2015, and Mark's the director of Nanostar. We get a grant, so we start that summer. We start doing pesticide degradation research because Mark said, therapeutics, you guys need to be here for 12 more years at least, and we were graduating in 2 years. So we work on pesticide degradation over the summer, and then Mark encourages us, don't treat this as just a research project. Actually think about entrepreneurship. And I know you guys are wondering, why are you guys so photogenic? And that's because we're always smiling or always flexing. But your second question is, who should I talk to start my company or know what to do? These two people right here, Alex and Liz. So we had our first pitch deck for that, the E-Cup concept competition. A lot of data, a lot of science. Yeah, we're gonna blow these guys away with all this cool tech. No one cares. If you're not a scientist, you're not gonna, not think about it. You're not gonna care. You want to see the numbers. You want to see the vision, and things like that. So, Alex and Liz really worked hard with us about, how to tell your story, because this is gonna be very important if you're pitching competitions or pitching investors, because some of them might not be as savvy in biotech. They might be software people, retail, things like that. And so, that was a great step for us. We got that concept competition, and then we went to the UVA E-Cup discovery competition. We got wrecked. The judges hated us. Top 5 wins an award. We didn't even make top 5, so this was one of those moments where, do we go for a launch? Do we try that third stage, or do we just kind of give up here? And in the meantime, we applied to the ILAB, and I'm sure you'll hear about it. We got put in touch with a lot of great mentors. Specifically, Rick Kulo, if you meet him, he's spent a lot of time with us, Evan Edwards. And mentors are, there's a couple different kinds of mentors. Some who will get coffee with you every now and then for 30 minutes, or those who will sit down for like 2 or 3 hours with you. And you go to them with a problem, but they're gonna be like, tell me everything that happened from our last meeting. Because they need all of the information before they can give you advice. 30-minute meeting isn't gonna, give them enough details to give you qualified advice. And these mentors meant, a lot to us in our journey. And so, we did the iLab, and then we went on our tour. Competitions, baby. And our first competition, actually, when we were, doing the E-Cup, actually Kevin, Isaac Ratz was speaking after me, sat down with us for about an hour and a half to 2 hours the night before, grilling us on our pitch. It's like, that's not good. You need this. No chance you win if you leave this out. And it was honest, and it's what we needed. So we went out, and it's our first big pitch competition, and we're at the Paramount, kind of like an audience like this. Obviously, we're nervous, but no, it went well, and we were charming, so we brought in the the audience award as well. So that was our first big win, and now we can start doing some field trials. And from there, we won the Velocity Tour, Collegiate Inventors, things like that. So all these competitions, competitions are great, but there was also a downside because people started thinking, oh, well, these guys just do competitions. They're not a serious company. Well, they can think that, but we needed the money because in biotech, you need some sort of preliminary data to then go raise money. If we had no data, no field trials, and we went and raised money, one, no one would give us money. And if we did, they'd have like 90% of the company. So we did what we needed to be able to raise our next round. And here's an important moment. So mid competition tour, we brought on our first, CEO. His name is Reese. He said, pesticide degradation is great, but as a student talking to farmers and you ask them, do you want pesticides degraded, they're obviously gonna say yes. No one's gonna be, no, I love pesticides, I drink them. Why would you clean up pesticides? No, they're gonna tell us, yeah, please break them down, we'll buy it. But when you're approaching them as a graduated student working at a company, would you purchase this? Then it's like, oh, well, I abide by the regulations, I do all my sprayings and things like that. Why would I pay to spray again? And Reese kind of got us thinking more about, okay, well, how can you guys degrade pesticides? What's the platform technology? And so we started thinking about that, and that's when we started gaining momentum about, raising our money. And one of the things I'm supposed to talk about is that moment where I became an entrepreneur. And I don't think this really happens. I wasn't grinding till 4 a.m. because money doesn't sleep, and then my laptop, my laptop burns out, and I see my reflection in the laptop, like, Pime, you're an entrepreneur. That doesn't happen. Like, I was still trying. At this point, Reese comes in. I'm still trying to go to med school. Like, like this is a dope extracurricular activity that's gonna put me on the map for med school. But once I went to my first med school interview at Penn State for MD PhD, this is a scholarship program. I'm getting paid to go to med school. Obviously, this is a dream come true for me and my parents, who brought me from Iran to the States, made all the sacrifices for me to do this. So this is great. And one of my interviewers, like 10 minutes in there, was like, don't do it. Don't do what? It's like, don't come here. Like, what do you mean? It's like, don't go to MD PhD because this program might beat the creativity out of you, and you already have a company. Like, our med school is not going to shut down in 3 years. Like, apply again 3 years from now. Like, my interviewer is telling me this. Is this a sign? So, so I think to myself, you know what? Okay, sure. So I got in, I asked for a year deferral, because we hadn't raised money yet, so I have a year, let's see if we can raise money and build a lab, and if it doesn't work out, I still have a solid backup plan. But no, things worked out really well. So Amir and Reese, while we were at the Thought for Food competition in Amsterdam, making connections, winning more competition money, Amir and Reese, stepped out of the spotlight and went to Turkey to close our lead investors. And obviously I wanted to be there to, bring in our closing investors, but that's something you also learn. When you have a co-founder at the beginning, you want to be in every meeting together. But we learned that some meetings, it's better that just he goes and I allocate my time for other things. So we raised our round. We actually have a lab now up on 29. If you are in the area, come by. We'll give you a tour. And also we got our first major contract with a chemical company where they pay for the research and we develop products with them. And that was a really big moment for us because, raising the round was great, but this was industry validation. So now we have something we can work towards. And where we are now, so I mentioned Reese, and Reese was a great addition to the team. And this summer, Reese came to us and he said, it might be better if we hire a more experienced CEO. My life is taking me towards a different direction, and I think that you guys would benefit from bringing in another CEO. So we brought in Doug, who, he previously, and this is another thing, you don't need to start a company now. Doug had a whole career as a prosecutor in New York as a lawyer, and then he, had 13 years in New York, and then after that, started his company. So people start companies at different times, don't feel rushed. And so he actually went to Duke Business School, started his own company, sold it to Monsanto, which is great CEO material for us because he brings validity, he brings experience. And now we have this cool piece of, this cool machine, might be one of the few in Charlottesville, it's called a fermenter. It makes a lot of bacteria at once for us to do testing. So this is how we scale, and then we take what we make in there, we take it to greenhouses here at Danville, Virginia, where they have greenhouses, smart tables, things like that for just to do scale testing. So we're excited about the stage we're at. And I mentioned a lot of people, but these three guys I really want to bring attention to. Zach, our lead biochemist. I mean, just with an undergraduate degree, this guy's making new strains of bacteria, working on biocontrols, like doing incredible things. Joey, doing awesome things for making sure our product can actually work in the field. So a lot of times when you're working on a cool technology, you do a lot of lab stuff, but it doesn't really matter if that doesn't work in the field or in a human or whatever you're working towards. You gotta make sure your technology is gonna work, at the end. And Seth, who's working on our synthetics and formulations. Again, I wanna reiterate, these guys don't have PhDs, but I still haven't met a PhD that I've been more impressed with than these guys. And one of the most rewarding parts of what I've done is seeing these guys grow into the scientists they've become today. And also a big thanks to my family. So I'm an only child. Like I mentioned, my parents immigrated from Iran to here, and I was worried to tell them, I'm gonna turn down this full ride to med school to be poor. How does that sound to you guys? We see that you're passionate about this and you want to do this, so med school is always there. If this fails, you have to go to med school, but maybe you don't have to. And my girlfriend Taylor, who deals with my mood swings and my stress and things like that, so I appreciate it. And lastly, thank you, UVA. I met the wonderful people I work with here, my wonderful mentors, advisors, colleagues, and my degree. So I want to be a resource to you guys. I'm always on my phone, so I'll get your email if you need someone to talk with, someone to brag to. Maybe you don't want to brag to your friends because they'll think that's annoying. Brag to a stranger. Let's grab coffee. And I'm just here for you guys. So thank you so much for the time.
I'm getting inspired with all this. For all y'all in the back, if you want to take a seat, we have plenty of seats that are up here. Ashton, check your phone. And with that, we will bring Kevin Eisenfratz to the stage. Please welcome Kevin.
Hi everyone. Wow, I feel like I'm gonna tell a similar story here. Cool, so my name is Kevin Eisenfratz. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Contraline. We're a medical device company here in town, UVA spin-out company, and I'm actually gonna talk about my journey from student to founder and then now to CEO, which I think is a little different than what you're hearing is just as a founder. And so we're gonna differentiate that a little bit. But first, I wanna talk a little about who am I? And I've been getting this question a lot from people. Are you an entrepreneur? Are you a scientist? Who are you? And so, I don't know if I can define it, but definitely a biotech entrepreneur. But I really like to think I'm also a scientist. I graduated from UVA and I'm really interested in biomedical engineering. But I've really discovered that I also love inventing things. And so I don't think I can ever stop that. And then finally, more recently, I am calling myself an executive. And so I want to talk a little about my journey all the way actually from high school. And so I went to high school in the Academy of Allied Health and Science in Neptune, New Jersey. And it was a medically focused high school. So that's me right there, first year freshman in high school. And it was a really interesting high school. Some of you might know TJ and Nova. This was kind of similar, a magnet school. And so we got really cool opportunities in that high school. I mean, it was a bunch of literally, 15, 16, 17-year-olds that knew they wanted to be doctors at that age. And one of the things was I became EMT certified. And also, as part of our senior year in high school, we got to shadow any doctor in the county. And I chose to go to the OR, and that was pretty eye-opening. I got to see hundreds of surgeries in a semester, ranging from everything from hysterectomies to eye surgery, etc. It was actually during that time that I discovered my interest in reproductive biology. And so I was talking to a lot of OBGYNs and surgeons and discovered I might want to be an OBGYN one day. And there's a picture from my senior year with a bunch of my high school friends and what we wanted to be when we grew up. Maybe I want to deliver babies, maybe I want to help couples get pregnant that are infertile, or maybe I want to be a surgeon one day. And so in 2010, I actually applied to the UVA School of Engineering. Now, why engineering? Well, it was during that time that I also discovered that there were a lot of problems in reproductive biology that still needed to be solved. And I think that engineering could help solve them. So like IVF, it's so expensive and it's so painful for the female patient, but yet the success rate is so low. And so there's things that I think engineering, especially biomedical engineering, could help. So in 2010, I applied to School of Engineering, and here was the essay. It took me a lot of digging to find this one. If you were given $10,000 budget and the opportunity to build a small team of talented, motivated individuals, what would you propose to accomplish? It's kind of strange that they're basically asking, if you were an entrepreneur, what would you do? So I wrote about the male pill. And why the male pill? I frankly can say I have no idea why my 17-year-old self was thinking about why there is no male birth control. But I knew that it didn't exist, and I started doing research, and my essay was, if I had $10,000, what would I fund that could accelerate the development of the first male pill? So let's put that aside. But I got to UVA, and two things happened that were really important in my life, and Payam, this is going to be a huge shout out to your story as well. So the first one is that I discovered a new major called nanomedicine engineering. So Payam talked a little about this. This was a new program. I think it was 3 or 4 years old when I got here. And like I said, I wanted to do biomedical engineering. But they were telling me, here's this new program that is biomedical engineering mixed with chemistry, mixed with material science. And you basically take classes in all three. And it's got a focus on drug delivery and really cool stuff that's at the cutting edge. And so I'm the type of person, if there's something new presented to me, I just go for it. And even though it was the major that was kind of second place to BME, I wanted to make it the major that was first place in the School of Engineering. And so that was really important to me. And the second thing was I was looking to do cutting edge research. I started looking my first year of college, and I was introduced to this guy named Dr. John Hare. So that was extremely important, that connection to me, just like Mark was for Payam. So Dr. Hare was a professor in cell biology, urology, and biomedical engineering at UVA. But more importantly, he was actually the world's leading reproductive entrepreneur, if I can even coin that. And so what do I mean by that? He started 4 companies out of his lab, all having to do with reproductive biology. He was doing entrepreneurship at UVA 20 years before any other professor was doing it. And to be completely frank, he was kind of getting shunned for it. But I wanted to talk about one of the products that came out of the lab just to bring this all together, is a product called Sperm Check. So this is a at-home fertility test for guys to check their sperm counts. It's approved in 19 different countries in the world, Walgreens, CVS. You go to the CVS on the corner and they will have Dr. Hare's product. It took 15 years to make a discovery in a lab and then create this diagnostic test that's now found in every single chain store. I think that's huge. So many couples have really benefited from this product. So I got mentored by this reproductive biologist and scientist and entrepreneur. And for the next 3 years, I just did research because I still wanted to go to medical school and I wanted to get experience. And so I spent years in Dr. Hare's lab doing research on uterine cancer. I won't get too deep into that, but it was around immunotherapy. And then also, I really wanted experience to go back to my reproductive side, and so I did some research at the NIH in vitro fertilization. And then one day, my 3rd year, I got this email. And it was from a guy who's sitting right there, named Alex, who, as Liz said, all of you should know. And it basically said, hey, are you interested in biotech entrepreneurship? We can teach you how to win this competition for $20,000. And I was kind of just, it piqued my curiosity, and so I met up with Alex, Sean, and Ian that were starting this program called BioTrep for biotech entrepreneurship. And they were the ones that really had to convince me to come up with an idea. And I was struggling. I'm not gonna lie, it wasn't like this. I was not going to be a founder. I had no interest in entrepreneurship, no classes in entrepreneurship taken, and I could not think of an idea. And it was right around, I think it was the month of December, I was going on a skiing trip, doing some research, and I found out that Dr. Hare my mentor applied for this grant to come up with a non-surgical sterilant for cats and dogs. And it's this big problem, and there was a $20 million grant out there for whoever can do it, and it's never been solved. In fact, he got funded to do it, and it didn't even work. And so I really wanted to solve that problem. And so the company I came up with, or the idea, was Contraline. And what Contraline was originally was, our big idea was to replace neutering with a procedure that was non-hormonal, non-surgical, and reversible. For those that know Contraline now, that might sound a little familiar. But this was the original logo. So I assembled a team of a couple of students and me, and we decided to start applying for these competitions. This was all while I was doing research in a lab. It was my 4th year thesis, and also I was studying for the MCAT. But this was the original Contraline student team, and we won a few competitions. First place in the Entrepreneurship Cup, Darden Business Plan Competition, which doesn't exist anymore, I believe. The ACC and Venture Prize, we were the first team, UVA team, to compete in that. We won 2nd place, and also we were finalists in the Collegiate Inventors Competition. And in total, we won $45,000 to work on this idea. And we didn't have data at the time. We didn't have a lab. So this was the funding that got us to actually put the money into the Dr. Hare's lab, get some lab space, and actually start doing experiments to see if this idea works. By the way, this is like 5x smaller than what Ashwin and Payam and the rest of the students or the entrepreneurs are doing now. So this was a lot of money for us. And then we got into the Darden, into the UVA iLab, which is the incubator here at UVA. And this was a really important moment for me because this is where I started transitioning from student to founder. And I was learning about entrepreneurship for the first time. I had students working with me, and we were just trying to figure it out. What could we do to progress this with the money we had? So we were doing some R&D to get some proof of concept in Dr. Hare's lab. We were doing some market research to figure out if this idea actually could work. And then we were building a team. And I have to say the iLab was the best place to mess up. It just gave you the ability to screw up and to learn how to fail, but also learn how to pivot and do your next, and then do the next big thing. And so that is where you probably are wondering, why are you doing market research? You're engineers, just go build a product. Well, we called up 500 veterinarians and pet owners and shelters and zoos, and we're like, hey, do you want this alternative to neutering? And pet owners were like, I just got a new puppy, and I was like, they might be like, yeah, this sounds great. This sounds a lot better than neutering. It's so humane. And then vets straight up said, no, we will never do this. There was one vet in the entire country that said, maybe I would do this, and he still works with me to this day. So that idea didn't work, but something really interesting happened, which there's a lesson here, is listen to people. All the vets and pet owners we were talking to said, wow, I don't want that for my dog, but I want that for myself. And women were saying, why doesn't this exist for my husband or my boyfriend? And so it was a really natural pivot. I had my mentor, I had Dr. Hare, my co-founder, in my ears saying, we need to go to humans. We need to transition this product to humans. And so that is how Contraline became a male contraceptive company. And that's what we're developing, the first long-lasting, non-hormonal, and reversible male contraceptive. And the problem that we're going after is pretty huge. So in 2017, 65% of the entire world used birth control. Yet, only 20% relied on male forms of birth control. So you have to ask yourself, why is that? Why is there such a big dichotomy here? That there's more people in the world not using contraception than there are men using contraception. And the reason that we found was men only have 3 options. It's not that they don't want to, it's that their options are really limited. So the 3 options, you probably know, condoms, which have actually a pretty high failure rate if you don't use them perfectly, and also a really high dissatisfaction rate. And then vasectomy, which requires surgery and it's permanent. And then finally, withdrawal, or the pull-out method, which is basically a coin toss and has a 20% failure rate. So I'm not a doctor, can't give anyone any advice or anything here, but it's a coin toss. So there's a really big problem here, and that's why at Contraline, to sum it up really succinctly, our goal is to create the IUD for men. The intrauterine device is the long-lasting reversible contraceptive for women, and there's nothing like that for men. In fact, 12% of women in the US have an IUD, which is huge. And so what we're doing, our technology is this hydrogel, this gel that we implant into the vas deferens, or the tubes that transport sperm. And so we plug up this vas deferens with our gel, the sperm get blocked by it. It's really effective, non-hormonal, and then we could dissolve that gel later on in time. And so that's very simply put, the technology. I'm not gonna go too deep into that, but I wanna talk a little about our progress, because for a lot of people are shocked when they hear that Controline's a 3-year-old company. And that includes all the pivots that we've done along the way. So I graduated in 2015, we started the company, we were in the iLab, and in 2016, we got our first proof of concept with our first generation hydrogel. So this was our old formulation. And I'm not gonna go too into technical details on what that was, but we basically said, yeah, this is pretty feasible. I think we can make this work. And then we filed our first patent on that, and that was still at the lab at UVA. We actually licensed that technology from UVA. And we got accepted into Y Combinator's fellowship program, which unfortunately doesn't exist anymore, but it was this program that we got a lot of the benefits from Y Combinator, including mentorship and connections to investors, which was huge. And we raised our first round of funding, $680,000 from angel investors, locally and some in Silicon Valley as well. And at that point in time, we hired our first 3 employees, and all of them were working on the R&D side. So in 2017, that was probably the biggest year for Controline. We took that money and started working on our next generation hydrogel, our next generation technology that we thought was gonna be 10x better than the first. And it turns out it was true. So during that time, we filed 5 patents, and that was all owned by Controline. We acquired 4,600 square feet of lab and office space here in Charlottesville, Virginia. So we outfitted an entire lab to do the medical device development. And we raised we raised $2.25 million led by Founders Fund, which is Peter Thiel's VC firm out in Silicon Valley. And that was really due to our connections at Y Combinator that started that. And because of that, we got to expand to 7 employees. And then in 2018, just so far, we're transitioning our product into preclinical stage. What does that mean? Well, we have our formulation locked down. We met with the FDA. We had a really successful meeting, and we're now about to start the trials in a few weeks where we're putting our device into large animals, and if it works, we're going to humans. So that's gonna be the biggest awe drop for me personally, is to see our product impact lives and be in clinical trials. On top of that, we have 11 patents now. 1 just got issued, so that was really big news for us. And then we fully operated the lab, just something, this is my personal view. As a scientist and engineer, a lot of biotech companies these days are outsourcing things or doing things where it's called virtually. We're the exact opposite. So we said we will not believe if our product works if we can't build it ourselves and test it ourselves. So about 98% of our R&D is done in-house. And then finally, we're closing an additional $3 million round of funding right now, and we're now 9 employees. So I think that this and next year for Controline are gonna be really, really big milestones. And so just so you can see how much you can grow. So I went from student to founder, and now I wanna talk a little bit about that transition to a CEO. When you're a founder, you're scrappy. You do everything yourself. You're trying to be resourceful and trying to get a team together and use professors and advisors to help you. But when you're a CEO, you're no longer trying to be scrappy anymore. You're trying to manage a team. And that's a totally different experience. You can't do everything yourself, and so you need the help, and you need to learn how to become a better leader. And so how to step back and let people that are better than you do things a certain way. So that was really hard for me. Not gonna lie, it took about 9 to 12 months for me to make that transition. But now I have an incredible team that's just really, really good at what they do, and I don't think we would have gotten this far without them. So each day I'm learning how to be a better CEO and really run this company and make it successful. So now I wanted to give just a couple pieces of advice for you guys in the crowd. And the first one is why or when or should you even become a founder? So there's 4 things that I think could spark you to become a founder. The first one is you have an innate calling, this passion to solve a problem. And this goes back to my essay on the male pill. I think I've been thinking about this for years, and my passion in reproductive biology, I really wanted to solve this problem, and to be honest, I won't stop until I solve this problem, whether it's Contraline or a different company. And so this is this innate calling that you have to solve a problem. And then the next one is you have a skill that makes you the right person to solve the problem. So maybe it's engineering, maybe it's medicine for the speaker we're gonna hear next. Or for me, I think it was a combination of the reproductive biology experience I got in the lab with the engineering education I got. And so people ask me, sorry for the comm schoolers in the room, why didn't you go to the comm school if you're an entrepreneur? And to be honest, I don't think I would have been able to start this biotech company if I didn't have that knowledge of working in a lab and getting my engineering degree. And the third thing is you identify a good problem by working somewhere. So sometimes you could be at a tech company, and sometimes it's better to spend a couple years working at a different company to learn what their problems are internally. And for me, it was working in Dr. Hare's lab where they spent 20 years trying to create a male contraceptive to learn how big that problem was and what didn't work in the past. And then finally, you might have that problem yourself, and we won't go there. So a couple other things. Entrepreneurship is about building relationships. Highly recommend getting a co-founder. Dr. Hare passed away 2 years ago now, and I really miss him. It's lonely being a sole founder, but I highly recommend finding a best friend, a mentor, and someone that could be your co-founder that you could go back and forth on ideas with. Second is advisors. So this guy, Evan Edwards, was my mentor at the iLab, and he was the biggest really win that we got from the iLab. He's been my mentor since then, and he's actually on the board of directors of Contraline. And the third thing is the team members. So this is a picture of Greg, my VP of product, myself and Nikki, my COO, right after we killed a pitch to Founders Fund. So that was pretty fun in San Francisco. And who's not on here, just because you've seen so many pictures already, are my friends who have helped along the way, who have been an inspiration, who have been support. You have your consultants and you have collaborators. So I've counted about 10 professors have helped me along the way in some way or another. And so you have this incredible resource at UVA, which is the professors and the research. Use them. Entrepreneurship is about taking risks to try something you might not be qualified for, but you have the potential to be. And so people think entrepreneurs are risk takers. They're calculated risk takers, right? So for example, I've actually written all 11 of our patents at Contraline. 3 years ago, I didn't know what a patent was. Turns out they don't really teach that, or at least I didn't take the class at UVA that taught that. And so that's something that I learned. I realized it took really quickly for me to pick up by asking all these patent lawyers, by doing a lot of Googling, and figuring out what makes a good patent. And so 3 years later, you could basically do it yourself and arm your company with something really important, like an IP portfolio. So UVA sets you up for that. At UVA, you have student governance. You learn how to be a leader just by going to this university. So really, you should not be afraid to take risks, especially as a student at this university. And guess what? 99% of the time, you're gonna become an expert at that thing that you had no idea how to do earlier. And then finally, because this is technology innovation, I have to say, building a product is really hard, especially from scratch. And so if you're going to build a product, then you've got to make it worthwhile and build something that's really crazy that can help a lot of people. You guys literally are in the best time right now to be alive. There's so many problems that need to be solved. And so you guys, just from biotechnology alone, CRISPR, genetic screening, etc., cancer, you literally can work on the biggest problems. And so my takeaway for you is work on something that's going to impact a lot of people. And so just to end this presentation, I found this equation, because a lot of you are engineers, from my wannabe mentor, Elon Musk. So the equation's total usefulness is equal to U minus C times P, where U is usefulness to one person, C is how useful is the competitor or the comparable product, and then P is the number of people you can actually impact, right? So what this equation is basically saying is you want to make something that people love, or even one person loves, and it's got to be better than the competition, but also it's got to impact a lot of lives. And so if you don't have something better than the competition, you need to even reach out to even more people. And if you have something that's 10 times better than the competition, you might not need to reach out to as many. But either way, that's how you create a useful product. And so thank you very much, and I wish you guys the best of luck on your entrepreneurial journeys.
Wow. It's so great to hear these reflections from the students that I saw right when they were beginning. So we're going to transition a little bit, and I mean, Kevin alluded to it. We're going to be bringing up someone who will talk to you about what it's like to start a company already having a full-time job. But maybe you're not going to start it right after graduation. Maybe you're going to start it, when you have a full-time job, when you work somewhere. Arjun is one of those people. So, thank you.
Thanks. Wow. These are such great talks. Actually, it's hard to follow because I just think back to my undergrad days. So I'm a assistant professor of ophthalmology here at UVA, and so yes, I do have a full-time job. So I see patients in 2 clinics here at UVA and do surgery as well on the eye. But I've learned a huge amount from everybody here in the room, and then I just wanted to share some of that it is possible to actually move the needle forward even as a faculty member, and kind of how I did it. That said, I just wanted to come. I couldn't resist it. So Payam's talk was so amazing. What I love that slide. Say no to medical school. That's, as an ophthalmologist, that's interesting to hear. But that said, it is really true. It is not for everyone, and that's one thing. I think it's very, very common for people to sort of start on a path that starts sometimes at birth, and then sort of, why did I get here, and what am I really sort of going to get out of this, and is this really right for me? And I think it's important. I think what a hero or heroine that person was who talked to you that day, and to tell you that maybe this isn't right for you. And I think that's the same for a lot of us. But I want to say that. So my own journey, I wanted to show you guys a lot of really cool technology and eye photos. I'm only going to show you one, mostly because Alex wanted me to really focus on just sort of the story aspect today. So this is kind of things they didn't teach me in medical school. But I really briefly wanted to kind of talk about what it is that I did. So essentially I came up with a diagnostic system to turn our patient exams and charting, and this is from an actual patient chart, really, for real. This is what gets charted as to what's happening in somebody's eye in 2018, from this to this. So this is actually what is in the eye, and that's what I see on a daily basis when I see patients. And I came up with a system to kind of capture that wealth of diagnostic data in real time as doctors see patients. And I wanted to sort of mostly focus on the story of my journey of how I actually did that. And as to where we are today, I ended up stripping out. I talked to my wife beforehand, and Alex said 10 minutes. So I ended up stripping out all the story of the actual platform that we developed. But I did want to say that at this stage we actually built this. So I formed a team, sort of found that through the UVA Eye Lab as well. And then iterated our prototype diagnostic system now multiple times, as well as an associated software platform, filed our initial IP, and we're actually now gearing up to beta test our diagnostic system in actual doctors' offices in multiple practices in coming months. So kind of I wanted to focus on, so how did that actually happen? So I think the most important thing, or one of the most fundamental things, is what I call a beginner's mindset. And the kernel of the initial idea for my entire diagnostic system came when I first had to actually learn how to examine the human eye, and that was as a medical student. So as a third-year medical student, spending a little bit of time in some ophthalmologist's office in University of Tennessee, which is where I grew up in Memphis, And then I noticed that we're using 100-year-old technology to examine the human eye and make all our diagnoses. I'm talking about what the doctor does. And that seemed a little strange to me. But I sort of, put that aside, and then I fast forward a couple of years to a first-year resident, actually my first week of training in Philadelphia. And I'm moving from, sort of saving lives in the ICU and that kind of thing to, well, how do I learn all these tools and actually see patients on a daily basis? And again, it seemed very, very strange to me that we're using a process of trial and error when we're examining our patients. And so I actually came up with the initial both idea and then the initial prototype examination system of taking images directly from the patient encounter, from the instruments that we use to examine the patient, and then stream them wirelessly to basically remote screens initially for teaching purposes. So I did that, but then I put it aside again because mostly I had this idea that, well, of course someone smarter than me and better connected surely must have already made this. And it's interesting, how much we can have this sense of a, that kind of, what do they call it, imposter syndrome. You're sort of sitting in there and like, surely somebody must have already done this. And then I sort of set that aside for years. And then prior to coming to the University of Virginia, I actually was funded to go around the world for a year, to go to 8 different countries, practice, teach, do a lot of eye surgery, and see patients in 8 different countries around the world, where encountered, unfortunately, really being faced with the burden of global eye disease on a daily basis. And I noticed that one of my major things that I ended up being able to contribute was teaching regarding the back of the eye, diagnosis and treatment of the back of the eye. But the tools really didn't exist to capture the imaging from the back of the eye while the doctors are doing the examination. And so that sort of led me to come back in my own head to that initial kernel of an idea, but maintaining that idea of what are the fundamental problems that exist within, in my area it was in ophthalmology, within eye care, and then remembering that. Now I would kind of go back, so that beginning of mindset, that's good. That's in terms of coming up with kind of the good ideas, right, the big ideas. Well, in an academic environment, that's really plentiful. And I think that's one of the really great things now, is that, this sort of idea of promoting entrepreneurship. I think there's this really established idea of coming up with big ideas and trying to solve them now. I've been very impressed with UVA in that regard. That said, though, the power of experience and by the same token, data is really important. This is not really a system I would have come up with, or definitely decide to put my effort and time into as a young man, but rather as a practicing ophthalmologist. At this point, there's 10 years of training and clinical practice in 8 different countries that sort of led me to today to say that actually this idea that I came up with a long time ago can solve a lot of real-world problems for a lot of clinical practices as well as patients. There's a lot of resources that are available for you to sort of take this idea of verifying your idea and with real-world practice, just to make sure that you're actually solving an actual problem for customers, for patients, for that sort of thing. The iLab, the NIH and NSF iCore, these are all options that are available to you. And then Alex likes to promote, there's a little PDF pamphlet, you can find it online, called Talking to Humans. And I'll be, at the end of my slide deck, I'll sort of throw up a couple of different things that you can search for that'll help you in sort of doing this. But I think it's really, really important to take that real world data to ground your big ideas. And then also just thinking, is there a business model here? And that's something that you may not get right, you probably won't get right initially, and I certainly didn't. That's something that I think you'll just end up iterating and changing over the course of time, but you always want to go back to what's really happening in the real world. And I think Kevin did an amazing job of that, and then along with the other presenters today of making sure that that's communicated to you. The other thing that's talked about a lot in the iLab is this concept of, the bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush, that kind of thing. What is it? And I think, I think even Payam, some of the other people sort of talked about this. I know Kevin did, that what is it that sets you apart in terms of your unique either ability or knowledge base in a specific area? So for me, I mean, I was fortunate to sort of have more of a liberal arts background, so maybe that, I don't know, maybe that sort of led me to sort of be more responsive to out-of-the-box thinking in my own training and my practice. But I think the major thing for me was that I am designing a product for myself and for my colleagues. And I think that's very, very important. So in a way, I'm my own harshest critic. I'm not going to release a product if I don't think it has clinical utility for my patients, or if it's going to slow down myself or my colleagues. So that's my comparative advantage, and I think for many of us, we'll end up finding our own, but I think that's important to think about. Other things, so in terms of the actual route that people take, so going about it as a faculty member, the first thing that I would like to stress is that, so again, we built this system, we have filed the initial IP, we're gearing up towards actually testing it in doctors' practices. All of this was possible at UVA. And this is not something, I heard it a couple of times in other people's talks, that this idea that, I didn't think about being an entrepreneur, or some people actually initially had the idea. I absolutely did not think I was going to be an entrepreneur. So I set out to do the same thing I do on a daily, weekly basis, which is to take care of patients, to teach, and to combat the global burden of eye disease. I didn't think that I would end up setting out special time for myself to start up a company and do this, but it turned out that that's what I ended up doing. Now, I needed a lot of help to get me there, and particularly when you're going about that inside of an institution, there's this idea of not just entrepreneurship, but intrapreneurship. And so that's sort of an entrepreneurial mindset within a larger institution. There are a lot of those people here at UVA. So obvious examples, so Alex Surfetta and then Liz Pyle over at Works in Progress and other institutions here at UVA. They really are good entrepreneurs at linking you to other resources and people. The iLab at UVA, I would not be here without them. So David Tuvey and Jason Brewster at the iLab and the other mentors that we've met through there have been very, very helpful in terms of that linking. And then, in terms of actually sort of crossing the T's and dotting the I's and that sort of thing, so licensing and venture group, so Michael Stradiff has been very, very helpful in terms of, what is it that I actually have to do in order to accomplish this goal here at UVA as a full-time faculty member. And you can do it too, just make sure you kind of talk to the right people ahead of time. And then having an institutional champion, I think, is really important to actually achieve that goal. I would also not be able to do this without the support of my chairman, Peter Netland, who has, allowed me to finish my glaucoma fellowship 3 years ago, about almost a month early, after I'd saved my vacation time, to then participate in the UVA iLab and then go on to recruit a team and start Scan Optics over the following year. And then just understanding that having those champions, I think, is important because when you're working within an institutional framework, not everybody will get it. That's the thing, is most people are going to sign up to, particularly, within an academic environment or a medicine environment or a scientific research environment. Sometimes entrepreneurial mindset might be frowned upon, and I think that was brought up in some of the other talks. That is true, so finding a champion, I think, is important to sort of get you through those things. All right, the other thing is breaking out of your silo. So there's an Indian expression called being a frog in a well. And that idea is that sort of a frog sitting at the bottom of a well is stuck in a silo, and their entire view of the entire world is just simply the sky, the little patch of sky that they see above them, and they think that that's the whole world. We in healthcare, just as a bit of self-criticism, I think we're some of the worst at this. So it's very, very, very easy to really, really become hyper specialized in your view of everything in terms of our clinic and our OR. And I think it's so useful. One of the most worthwhile things for me was to find out that, just even a walk down the street from the hospital center, there's resources available where they're building, Mars lander type vehicles and in cars. these sorts of resources available to us. I would have never discovered these things if it weren't for getting out of my clinic at least part of the week and then participate in something like the iLab, where I was able to meet my counterparts, my peer mentors or senior mentors or betters in other parts of the university and in the community in Charlottesville and elsewhere. And again, just finding those peer mentors. I think Alex talked about this. Modeling entrepreneurship, I think, is really important, just to see that it's important, that it's possible. And because, you know, again, this is certainly for me not something that I ever thought that I was going to do in medical school. And then I think that this is something that every one of the presenters has talked about, you know, making lemonade out of lemons. And we've had our share. So, you know, again, I think, you know, Alex wanted me to come up with a story where things didn't go right. And I think we've certainly had several, but I think the thing that stands out for me was originally, you know, the whole point of the entire imaging system for me had to do with international medical education. And basically my system enables any examination instrument used by any eye doctor, optometrist or ophthalmologist, to turn into a real-time telemedicine imaging system. And so I had actually applied for a NIH grant, rather substantial NIH grant, and established a legal relationship between UVA, our clinical department in ophthalmology, the Department of Infectious Diseases, as well as an eye hospital in Uganda that one of my mentors had a clinical teaching relationship with. And we went through a lot of effort to try to set up that whole relationship, and then applied for this pretty substantial undertaking to basically make a telemedicine imaging system between our two countries to try to improve their residency program and their teaching and how to actually monitor and treat eye disease, particularly retinal eye disorders. And then we didn't get the grant. And the grant was actually going to support iteration of our prototyping internationally, to basically field test our initial prototypes in Uganda. But actually that experience led me to go back and actually do a lot of interviews with eye doctors here. And then in the meantime, sort of while we're sort of figuring out what to do next, to really test our device with doctors here. And that led to an entire series of extremely surprising observations where we discovered that there's a huge amount of need for in multiple settings in terms of private practice, optometry, as well as ophthalmology, in a variety of different practice settings here in the US that I never really thought of before. And then that was sort of going to be a long-term kind of thing. And then, and also that idea that Kevin put in his slide that making products is really hard. And I think we really underestimated that in the beginning. I mean, we've had to solve about 12 different technical challenges to make the process of capturing what doctors see when they're examining patients utterly seamless. We don't even have a screen in our current system. So we really have to rely on our technology to make it as seamless as possible. So I think it's been very, very, you know, important for us to get those lessons that we have to really get the product right first before we start putting it into other people's hands. And also that there really is a need here in the US. And we wouldn't have understood that if we hadn't kind of had that setback. And then I think finally I just wanted to talk about that, you know, I think, you know, other people have also mentioned this, that teams really do matter. I think there's a sort of myth of the, you know, one-person company or something like this, and I have no illusions. So I was, again, taught as an eye doctor and ophthalmologist with background in public health, international public health. And again, this is something that was really surprising to me that I ended up engaging in. But my long-term vision is actually eventually to take a step back and to be more in an R&D and medical director role. And I think one of the greatest lessons from going through something like the UVA iLab is that ultimately that other people will have pass on this journey themselves. So, you know, finding the right people to work with, I think it's really, really, really important. There's a lot of matchmaking resources here at UVA and at Darden. So Alex and Liz are really good at this. David Chen with the Coulter Institute. There's these online tools like Bright Crowd, I think is what they call themselves now. Sort of a matchmaking service for entrepreneurs. I think it's important to find your counterparts when you're trying to start a company. So just recognizing your own limits, I think that's kind of a lesson that I learned myself as well. And you know, finding those those contributors to what is the real problem that you're trying to solve, and then who are the different people at different stages in your journey that you're going to need, because that is also going to be an evolving thing. And I would say that UVA Seed Fund has been extremely helpful when it comes to that, determining, okay, at this stage, what are you going to need, when you're doing your beta testing versus when you end up actually then shipping a product, what are you going to need at that point? And I think that's an important lesson to learn. And then I wanted to include this to say that, I'm a real person, and this is my 4-month-old son, and that some days I do feel like this. And so sometimes you don't always get it right. And in my clinical practice, I have a busy glaucoma practice. I specialize in the minimally invasive treatment of glaucoma. International ophthalmology, I'm helping run the glaucoma fellowship at UVA, as well as my research, plus scan optics, and then a 4-month-old son and my wife, and our 80-year-old house. And so I think momentum, I think that was something brought up before, that sometimes is the hardest thing to sustain when you're doing this as a full-time faculty member. What I would say that's really helped me has been setting aside, and that's something I was able to negotiate, was to really set aside time to work on the company. And so every week I set aside time to do this, and then in terms of forming that mentorship network, so Seed Fund has really been helpful in that, in just feeling like you're continuing to move forward and you're moving that needle forward constantly every week. Otherwise it's very easy to get overwhelmed between all the different directions that somebody who's a faculty member is going to get pulled in. But then on good days, I think it's really rewarding. This is my son Ravi, and this is my wife Carly, who's here. And I just really wanted to say that my first mentor was really Carly. So when I came here 3 years ago after doing my international fellowship overseas with an idea that I would just be in Charlottesville for 1 year, do my glaucoma fellowship, and then probably get back overseas. And I met Carly about 2 weeks later, and then here I am now. And actually, it was Carly that I think mostly got tired of hearing me whine about some of my frustrations with the way medicine is practiced in the US. And she's the one that actually told me about the iLab. So she had known about the iLab through Shark Mountain Coffee's Entrepreneurial journey. And then she said, she actually is the one that sat me down, connected the dots between my idea of the connected medical exam and the augmented examination of patients, and then some of my frustrations with practicing medicine in the US, as well as the remarkable resources that are available over at UVA at the iLab, available to faculty and students as well as community members. And so she helped me actually file my application and write that. And in the middle of a patient day, one of my mentors gave me permission to go do my pitch, and then I went back to seeing patients and actually to OR later that evening. But then I got in, and then that sort of brought me to today. So I took some concrete steps with a lot of help to help me realize my journey. That's an ongoing journey, and so we don't have a crystal ball, but that's something that is possible for all of you. And with the resources that are available, like with Alex, with the UVA Seed Fund, with Works in Progress, etc., we're hoping to move our clinical exams back from this, again, to this with a lot of help. So thanks, Alex.
All right, thank you, Arjun. Okay, now, the final speaker to really bring it all home. So this speaker is she's the only one of the speakers so far to have completed the first cycle of the entrepreneurial journey, in that her first company got acquired. So you're really going to see where all of this excitement and amazing traction really pans out at the end of it. So please welcome Karen Druffel.
So I'll admit, if I don't hold this up close enough, that I was all prepared, more or less, to not have notes in front of me. Then I got all engrossed in listening to these stories, completely forgot everything I was going to say. So I'm going to cheat, look back at my notes a little bit, get back on track. Excellent. So Alex, thank you very much for inviting me to be here today with these amazing individuals. In fact, when Ethan Scott, if he's here, from the UVA Office of Advancement, first approached me about this opportunity, I said to him two things. Number one is I'm thoroughly impressed at how far UVA has come with their entrepreneurial programs over the last couple decades. And number two, that I didn't think I was the right kind of speaker to have here today. Because I didn't create a new widget, a new product, a revolutionary compound, like what you think of when you hear about an entrepreneur. And that's when Ethan said, well, Karen, we would like you to speak because you're a little bit of a different kind of entrepreneur. I created a professional services consulting firm around software engineering, solving problems that businesses had through the use of software engineering. So that's, so earlier this week I had a chance to talk to Alex and find out what he thought were the important points, the relevant information that I should share with you here today. So the approach I'm going to take is based off of that, and I'm going to tell you just a little bit about myself to put it into context, and then I'm going to attempt to weave in the questions Alex has asked me to answer along the way, and weave those into the story of my journey as an entrepreneur. So a little bit about myself. I graduated from UVA Engineering, School of Engineering and Applied Sciences, with an engineering degree in computer science. I minored in the McIntyre School of Commerce in Business and in Management Information Systems. At this point in time, UVA Engineering did not have any business classes or entrepreneurship classes or any focus on those whatsoever. So I got double minored in comm school. My career is as a consultant. I specialized in the Oracle technologies and specifically in financial and supply chain systems for businesses. And now I've changed my focus and I'm looking at different technologies in my life. I am semi-retired. I'm part-time back in the industry, and I'm also doing a little bit of teaching. As an entrepreneur, I created my successful consulting firm when I was 29 and sold it 11 years later. My family, I've been married 28 years and have two sons. Ryan, he's age 18 and just started as a freshman at University of Maryland College Park. And my other son is Kyle, who's entering his junior year in high school. I have been an avid mountain biker and snowboarder, and I live near Baltimore, Maryland. So my journey is over a 30-year period. So I have 10 minutes to cover 30 years, and as we all like math, I got about 20 seconds a year to speed through. So we're going to start the timeline back in 1985 when I started in engineering, and Alex said to include photos. This is my graduation cap and gown from UVA. There's not a lot of photos from that time because, and this is where I'm going to age myself, right? I'm 51 years old. I've been out of school for 30-some years, and when I was in school, cameras were still that film that you had to take out of the back of the camera, mail in to be developed, and you get your little pictures back. This is embarrassing. You're going to hear several of these things along the timeline here. So I didn't have a cell phone, right? There was no email, there was no Wi-Fi, there was no internet, there was no digital photography. UVA had no entrepreneurship classes, and women were very rare in engineering. So that's where I began in 1985. And Alex said, when was the first time that you got the entrepreneurial itch? So for me, I put a little dot back before 1985. I actually started my first little company when I was in middle school. It was a sewing company. I sewed costumes, I sewed clothes, I reupholstered furniture, drapery, everything around that, and I made myself self-employed, making money doing that. And I learned from it. Then I came into UVA, and my first year I struggled in school. And I met my boyfriend, John. He was a double E, graduated in '86, now my husband. I worked for an engineering firm for some internships, and I worked in the UVA computer lab. And over the summer, my brother and I started a pool company, cleaning and repairing swimming pools. Again, another I asterisked it as another example of just kind of creating an opportunity of self-employment. So I did that for a couple years. It was profitable. We had fun with it. I did finish strong with school. I started off struggling to the first semester with a whopping GPA of a 1.8. And I'd like to say it was really good stories with lots of partying involved. Unfortunately, it wasn't. I wish it was. I was the year that too many students accepted admission to the university. So there wasn't enough housing for freshmen, and I was one of those unfortunate few who did not get to live on grounds my freshman year. I was put in off-campus housing out on Brandon Avenue in an upperclassmen dorm with nursing and med school students. I had no freshmen around me. I didn't hear anything about the rush, about sororities. I did find Greek row in the end, but so I had a very miserable first year experience, not the traditional one. So I was miserable. I had a 1.8. I went home and told my parents I'm not going back to school. I didn't register for classes, but I wanted a computer. And a computer with 2 5.25-inch diskettes, no hard drive. So my mom said, no deal, no computer, you don't go back to school, you're not getting a computer. So I said, fine, I'll go back to school. Came back to school, waitlisted for classes. I had to take a piece of paper to every professor and ask, again, no internet, asked to get into the classes. Because I actually tried to transfer out of engineering and into the college, but my GPA was so low they wouldn't accept me. Best thing that ever happened, I got stuck in engineering and I stuck with it. I finished strong. The point about that is, what did I learn and how did UVA influence me? I learned that when you get into a hole and you're very, very deep into a hole, like the 1.8, that you are the only one who's going to pull yourself out of it. And you need to know that you can pull yourself out of it. And that's what I learned. I can dig myself out of a hole and I will succeed. And that I never ever want to get into a hole that deep again. So I finished strong. By my 4th year, I was bringing in a 3.5 GPA. Graduated, got married. I went to work for a large consulting firm, Anderson Consulting, now Accenture. And I started another business on the side called Computer Innovations, consulting to small businesses and individuals on different IT-related services on the side. Did that for several years. Went to work for a small company called the Hunter Group, where it was about 30 people in the company, 30 employees. I was brought in to develop the technical component of a new division within the company. Over 3 years, we took that from 30 people to 350 people. At that point in time, I was getting into snowboarding and mountain biking. And that's the moment when Alex asked me, what was that moment when you decided to go out on your own and do it yourself? It was that moment there when I found that there were things going on in the company I was working for that bothered me. I didn't like the way certain things were being handled, the way clients were being approached. And so I decided to go out on my own so that I could do consulting in a way that I felt was morally, ethically correct, and with integrity. So I went out to do that on my own. And that's when I started TI Consulting. It was Technology Innovations because Computer Innovations was taken, and then we just shortened it to TI Consulting. So I started off with commercial clients with companies like National Geographic, Geico, Time Warner, and putting in the business systems that these companies needed. And I think one thing that I've learned a lot from UVA, that you've heard from the other speakers, is the ability to problem solve. I think that's what I went from my first semester to my 4th semester, while I was failing and then succeeding, is the ability to think differently. When a problem is presented to you or presented at you, is to look at it differently and see a solution instead of a problem. And so I would go into businesses and help them solve their problems using software. So about a year or so into the company, my husband came to work with me, and I had my 2 sons, Ryan and Kyle, about a year and a half apart. The company was growing. We started off early on, like I said, with the commercial companies, moved into the Department of Defense, primarily focusing on the intelligence agencies, doing a lot of work for the NSA, the CIA, the DIA, and highly specialized work there. Won several prime contracts between $2 million and $8 million. And then in 2005, I went after a contract that a big competitor had. The competitor was Accenture, my alma mater. And they had a successful contract for 6 years, getting all the award fee. We were the only company that went after it against them, and we ended up winning it. It was a $68 million contract award. That was a big one. And in 2007, I was awarded the Baltimore Smart CEO Future 50 Award. About that time, a company called Deloitte Consulting, who I had done work with a few years before on a project, reached out and said, hey Karen, we want to take you and John out to dinner, celebrate the big contract award. I said, sure, so we went out to dinner, And it was at dinner where they said that they've been watching me. They said, I've been watching you. Wait to see what you're going to do when you grow up. Well, you did it, and now we want to buy your company. I was shocked. I said, no thank you. I said, I'm fat, dumb, and happy. I got it all going on right now. Everything's great. So life kept going, and ultimately, 18 months later, the offer was right and the timing was right, and I decided to sell TI Consulting to Deloitte. As part of the requirement of the acquisition, I had to become a partner or principal equity owner in the firm. So I did that with Deloitte, and what did I do? What? Oh yeah, the non-compete. Have you guys heard of the non-compete? That's why you're laughing, yes. So I didn't pay much attention to that early on. I paid a lot more attention to it later. So one of my, you guys already get this advice, I'm sure then, is to never sign a non-compete or any other contract without legal counsel. Get a really good attorney. I have a great one. And it's the best, it's gonna be expensive, it's gonna be much more than you ever wanna pay, but it's the best money spent, is a really good attorney early on. And if you don't like them, fire them and get another one. I went through several accountants and several lawyers who'd like to address the letters to Mr. John Druffel. That didn't go over well. There was lots of firing. So, when I went up, it's actually funny, I went up to New York with my attorney, Stan Close, to meet with Deloitte's M&A staff and legal team to negotiate the terms of the acquisition. And we get up there and Stan and I go in. He's still my personal and business attorney to this day, a good friend. And we walked into the room and Deloitte had 8 people in this big conference room. It's like the Spanish Inquisition, there's 8 of them all lined up. Stan and I walk in and he laughs and looks and he says, Karen, look, 8 of them, 2 of us. I think the odds are pretty even here. And I was like, you're right, I agree. Bring it on. And we did. We negotiated the terms, sold the company, and after the 1-year mark, they did a financial analysis of the acquisition. The expectation was that there would be a 10-year period for them to recoup the investment they made in acquiring TI over a 10-year period. So at the 1-year mark, we did the financial analysis, and the bottom line number of profit at the bottom at 1 year came in at 486% of goal. So we had recovered in 1 year what they were expecting to recover in profit in 5 years. Very successful acquisition, went very well. And after 18 months as a partner in the firm, for many reasons, we decided to go our separate ways. This would be a whole other conversation. And so I retired. I wrote out my non-compete and my non-solicitation for a couple years. I learned a very important thing in those couple years, which my husband learned, my kids learned, I think my neighbors and my friends learned, is I'm a terrible stay-at-home mom. I'm like the PTA mother from hell. So after that period of time, I said to my husband, I said, John, you know, I think I need to go back to work. He's like, yeah, that's fine, sweetie. You do it, you know. I had an itch to scratch. It was just there. So I did. I reformed. Oh, so I also, during that period of time of non-compete, I traveled a lot. I started doing some teaching, and I did a lot of support to nonprofits, volunteered on the board of a number of nonprofits. In fact, that's how I met Ethan, is I am one of the board of trustees for the UVA Engineering Foundation, both philanthropically and on a volunteer basis. So I started back up, really creative name, Drawful Consulting. I didn't know what I wanted to do, so I just named it after myself. So what I do now is just strategic consulting, strategic and technical consulting to startup companies in the services industry about how to land government contracts. I consult to companies about how to grow their business into new lines of business and work with a company up near Fort Meade about how to digress into additional lines of service that they don't currently do. It's kind of like call me a hunter and go out and I can hunt and find new clients and break into new industries. I'm also consulting to and advising to a company, actually of chemical engineering PhDs out in Louisville, Kentucky, who are developing the materialization process to replace silver in solar panel conductivity with copper, a more affordable and abundant material. It's going to be very impressive. So I am actually advising them on reviewing their grant proposals, trying to get them to convey their information in a meaningful way so that business people can give them money. And I flew out there a couple weeks ago to advise them on their oral and written pitch to angel investors for the next round of seed money. And I am adjunct faculty teaching a class in computer science for software engineering at University of Maryland, Baltimore campus. And you might recognize that name, UMBC, from a recent basketball game. You know how hard it was to cheer on in that game? I got UVA and UMBC at the same time. It was hard. So. Oh, wait, I clicked too fast. Those are iguanas. So that's my journey through entrepreneurship. And Ethan had said to include photos. Like I said, there wasn't a lot of cameras. In fact, I got a digital camera in 1994, and it was that big because it ran on 3¼ inch diskettes. That was revolutionary. It was amazing. Now we all have our phones and take pictures, and everything's out there. So you guys are in a great situation with what UVA has to offer, with the entrepreneurship support programs, the classes, the competitions. If I could get in a time machine and come be in college now, I'd be so excited to see what I could create as an entrepreneur with everything like what you guys have here today. So what I'm going to do is I do have some photos, and this is kind of the rest of the journey, the second half of the journey of an entrepreneur, which Jack, I got my car, and Kevin, I also like Elon. And there is one photo in here. It's charging right now at the hotel. There is one photo in here where I'm actually wearing my UVA gear. And I'm in the Netherlands on an authentic scale to prove that I am not a witch. It's a historical landmark where they used to go get weighed to prove you're not a witch so you wouldn't get burned at the stake. That's the one that's in here. You'll see it real quick. It's got a UVA hoodie on. Tanzania, Africa, and Serengeti. Went there twice. Saw all kinds of phenomenal things. That's my son and husband on a hot air balloon ride over the Serengeti. We also did a Jeep. That's Mexico golfing. Costa Rica beaches. Aspen skiing. The Netherlands windmills. Me getting weighed. I'm not a witch. Maybe with a B. That is Sweden at midnight. Easter Island, Chile. Colosseum in Italy. Lost City of Petra in Jordan. Skiing in Aspen in Switzerland. Glacier National Park. Egypt pyramids and the Sphinx. Spelunking in Mexico. Midlife crisis. Taj Mahal. Morocco, Marrakesh markets. Scuba diving in the Great Barrier Reef in Australia. Angkor Wat in Cambodia. And Machu Picchu in Peru. This is the Galapagos Islands on National Geographic Endeavors. Charles Darwin's tortoises. Those are the iguanas. And then this is my next one. This is my wish. This is my next one. Is to go to Antarctica for a month. Thank you.
Okay, guys, a couple of final things. Oh yeah, that would be very good.
Wait, I forgot something. I did. Yes, I have my notes. I was going to it's funny. There's so much, I say repetitiveness, but commonality that we all come up with. And I thought I had all these like unique things to share, and I realized that they're not that unique. That's what everybody's been saying. But I'll just add to it that it is true that Jack mentioned momentum. Several people mentioned momentum. I called it persistence. Persistence is very important. Kevin had mentioned taking risks and making calculated risks. I believe in that. You can't succeed if you don't take the risk of failure. And failure is okay as long as you take it as an opportunity to learn from it. Some of your best ways of learning is failure. and, as Ashwin had mentioned. And choose not to hear people say you can't do something. My husband, somebody asked my husband one time, he's like, does Karen ever realize that things it's not gonna happen, kind of thing? You know, it's not gonna be done? And John said to them, because, oh, people will say it, she just doesn't hear it. And I literally just don't even register it. Just mute them and believe in what you want to do and just go for it, take your calculated risks, don't worry about the failures, learn from them, embrace your successes, and give it a shot.
Okay, here's some final thoughts. If you got anything from Karen's talk, it's that we didn't really have much when she was here at UVA beyond just, basic university stuff. We have so many more programs to help you get started with this. You don't really need anything, just do it, right? Don't let anyone tell you no. Go talk to lots of people. But thankfully, we do have a lot of things. We have a lot of programs that many of these fine people up here were also in, some of them, but they didn't need it, right? Maybe they met each other through there. But if you need something, I'm here. And if you want to be put through some programs with a little bit of guidance, I think the best thing that we have here at the university is this competition called the Entrepreneurship Cup, the concept competition. The first phase of this. It is literally like a 2-page submission. If you get picked, you might present for 5 minutes. It's just it's a harebrained concept. You don't even have to have done anything with it. It just can't be magic, right? There's a little bit more to it. You can learn all you want there. It's due October 26th. But I want to help you with this. And so tomorrow, this is only information for you guys who are here. Sunday, tomorrow at 7 p.m. in Olson 120. I want you to come, and I will detail the nuts and bolts of this. I won this competition. Kevin won this competition. Jack almost won this competition. Ashwin, too, almost won this competition, but, and Payam won this competition. So, I mean, they were all finalists. They all did. It was very helpful for them. And so please, I mean, I'm going to be there. So give tips from past winner, meet your future co-founders, and you can come even if you have an idea or if you need an idea. It doesn't matter. Just do something, right? So you'll be in the same room. So this is the accelerated workshops. We have so many more things, and that's on the flyer that you all should have gotten. And when you came in, it's either pink or yellow. If you didn't get it, it's going to be out there. Let us know you're coming there. Lastly, I do want to meet you. This is my email. Email me. Let's set up a meeting. And then finally, before I let you all go, can the speakers come up to the front so that the photographer, I think is still here, can get a picture of y'all. And with that, there is food outside, and the speakers will be around, so you can come up and ask them questions. So please, thank you guys for coming.